Welcome to the PagerDuty Twitch channel. This week we're featuring our partners Teleport, who provide just-in-time system access and role escalation. Join us to see how these features can help your teams respond to incidents in real time. If you're joining us on YouTube, click like and subscribe. Head on over to twitch.tv/PagerDuty and follow us for more streams. My name is Mandy Walls. I'm a DevOps advocate here at PagerDuty, and today Jonathan's going to be talking to us about Teleport's integration with PagerDuty, how that all works, and we're going to take a look at how that all goes together. Jonathan, welcome to the stream.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Tell us about yourself and what you do for Teleport, and what you're going to tell us about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Teleport. So I handle a lot of the pre-sales technical conversations, help customers through POCs, also help with some onboarding. Previous companies I've worked for include Palo Alto Networks, IBM, some other startups. I am also a member of the Army National Guard. I'm a cyber operations officer in that role. So I get to do some interesting incident response stuff with that. But today I will be covering our PagerDuty integration. So what that will look like is if somebody who is on call in PagerDuty receives some incident that is assigned to them, they can request a role within Teleport that will grant them access to an environment where that incident is occurring. And Teleport can check, is this person on call and do they have an incident assigned to them? If so, allow them to assume that more privileged role so that they can go in and fix whatever is causing that incident.
Excellent. So that's all on demand, configured in the conversation between PagerDuty and Teleport. This person is on call. We're going to let them have the access that they need and all that kind of stuff, rather than everyone having access all the time.
Exactly. A principle of least privilege.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll let you get started. You have some stuff to show us today. For folks who are just joining, welcome to the stream. We're talking to Teleport today with their PagerDuty integration. So that's where we're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen here. So let me start with this kind of architecture slide. And actually, before I do that, let me just kind of talk about Teleport at a high level. So Teleport allows you to unify your access to all of your infrastructure, regardless of where it's located. So you could have infrastructure, SSH servers, Kubernetes clusters, databases, internal applications spread across multiple cloud providers, located on-prem. They can also be completely firewalled off in private subnets. But with Teleport, you are able to unify that access so you can use Teleport to access all that infrastructure, regardless of location, regardless of its actual accessibility. And Teleport uses certificates for all authentication to actually access that infrastructure. So if we're talking SSH, it's using SSH certificates. If it's Kubernetes, Teleport will actually give you a short-lived kube config. But how this all works, the Teleport specific components are this Teleport proxy. So this is the component that users will be interacting with. So they don't directly access any infrastructure. It is always through this proxy. The other part is this authentication server. This is where Teleport's certificate authority lives. This is where the Teleport audit logs will be stored. So Teleport has a certificate authority where it can sign and issue user certificates as well as host certificates so that users, as they go to access some server, they can be assured that that is a trusted server because it has a host certificate signed by Teleport Certificate Authority, so they can know that there's no man-in-the-middle attack potentially happening. These audit logs, the kind of audit logs that Teleport provides are robust JSON formatted logs that will tie every action that a user does to their specific identity as it is within their identity provider, so within their single sign-on solution that they're using. So what that looks like in an audit log is you'll see not only is somebody potentially SSHing as root or some other user, but you'll see specifically what their IP address was, who actually was SSHing as that root or as that user. So you'll see, Canada was the person who SSH'd as root at this time. This was their IP address. In addition, Teleport will capture every single session. So every SSH session, you'll get a playback of everything that occurred in that session. Databases, Teleport captures all database queries. And so to bring it back to how this user actually gets those certificates, how they start their day, is they either can use TSH, which is Teleport's CLI tool. So they use TSH to log into this proxy. They can also use a UI that's served from this Teleport proxy. So that's in a web browser that they would interact with the proxy in that way. And so what happens when they kick off that login, it starts this single sign-on authentication flow. So it's not introducing yet another authentication means with Teleport. It's using the same SSO that users are using for everything else. And because that, as I said before, Teleport is identity aware, you're able to tie actions to the user's identity as it is within your identity provider. And when you set up this SSO integration, you're able to set up a mapping of groups that exist within your identity provider to roles that you can create within Teleport. So with Teleport, you're able to use role-based access control, so you can mirror the roles and responsibilities of your users within your organization so that you can ensure that when somebody is using Teleport to access infrastructure, that they can only access what they should be able to access according to their role within your organization. So again, principle of least privilege. And it's within these Teleport roles that it specifies what somebody is actually authorized to do with the certificates that are issued to them. So some of the things you can specify in these Teleport roles are what users somebody is allowed to SSH as, how long their access is good for. So these certificates are going to be short-lived. The other thing is you can associate labels with all of your infrastructure, and then in your Teleport roles, allow or deny based on those labels. And once this user has a certificate, they can go through this proxy to access what they need to access. If they require a more privileged role, so that's what I'll be covering with this PagerDuty integration today, that's where they can submit a request for a more privileged role. So for example, let's say by default, this developer can only access a testing environment, but something happens in a dev or production environment. They don't by default have access to those environments, but they can request a role that would give them permission to go into that environment to fix or take a look at something. So their request for that more privileged role can go to something like PagerDuty. And with this PagerDuty integration, as I said before, PagerDuty will check to see, is this user currently on call? And do they currently have an incident that's assigned to them? If so, go ahead and approve their request for that more privileged role. Once that request is approved, this user receives that new role, and they receive new certificates that reflect what is authorized in that new role. So very high level on the architecture to kind of summarize all that. SSH servers, Kubernetes clusters, databases, internal applications, soon Windows as well within the next couple of months. Doesn't matter where those are located, they can be spread across multiple cloud providers, on-prem, they can be completely firewalled off. With Teleport, you can unify all of that access so that users, they just go through this proxy to access that infrastructure. And there's an SSO integration that's set up so that you can map the group membership of your users to roles you create in Teleport to ensure that users can only access the infrastructure that they should access based on their roles within your organization. And if they require more privileged access, that's where these access requests come into play, where they can request a more privileged role, so temporary role elevation. And all of that access is using certificates, short-lived certificates. So that's the high-level overview of the architecture of Teleport here.
Let me ask you before we go on. So Teleport, so for folks who are familiar with PagerDuty, we know we're a SaaS, it's all run in the cloud. You are just, buying a subscription to our product. For Teleport, this is actually going to be something you're going to want to run somewhere within your environment, right? Whether it's in the cloud or maybe on premises or that kind of thing. Do you find most folks run it one place or the other, or how do folks set it up for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say the majority of our customers are self-hosting Teleport, so they're self-hosting the proxy authentication server, particularly if they have a compliance requirement, they probably will self-host it. We do have a hosted option, so a SaaS offering called Teleport Cloud. In that offering, we host the proxy and the authentication server for those customers.
Okay.
And to add their infrastructure to the Teleport Cloud instances that we're hosting for them, they will install the Teleport agent on their infrastructure, and that Teleport agent will establish a reverse tunnel from that piece of infrastructure to the Teleport proxy that's being hosted for them.
Oh, okay, excellent.
So then their users will go through the proxy and go through that reverse tunnel to access the infrastructure. That's in the Teleport Cloud offering.
Cool. Sounds
yeah.
Good. All right. We have one question so far in the chat, but I think maybe we'll get to it. Camden PD would like to know, do the Teleport roles map to PagerDuty roles? But maybe we'll get to that when we talk about the plugin.
They don't map to the PagerDuty roles. They map to the groups within your identity provider.
Okay, cool.
So if somebody, their group membership in the IDP is they're in the developer group, you might assign them by default a role in Teleport called developers, and have them so they can, with that developer role, they can only access infrastructure that has a label of environment equals developers.
Oh, perfect. That's super good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll let you keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing, I guess, to kind of summarize this that I didn't mention in my summary is the audit logs. So again, Teleport has robust JSON formatted audit logs, very easy to send those to some kind of SIM or other third-party tool to look for patterns, start generating alerts. Because with Teleport, you're not just going to see, hey, somebody SSH'd as root, who was that? But you'll see this specific user is the one who SSH'd as that user. This is their IP address. And also Teleport will capture the full session. So the full keyboard commands in that SSH session, if it's Kubernetes, every kubectl request, if it's databases, every database query. So very robust audit logs, which is very helpful if you're trying to achieve something like SOC 2 compliance or some other compliance. Auditors, love that kind of stuff. It makes the audit much easier.
Yeah.
So what I can do now is I can just at a high level show some of Teleport's capabilities in the product itself. So let me exit from this, go into my Teleport proxy here. So this URL is a Teleport proxy that I have in my own environment. Let me make this full screen here. So I have this set up to use auth0 for SSO in my own environment, but Teleport supports anything that speaks SAML or OIDC. So, that's going to support pretty much all the major identity providers out there. Well, let me log in auth0, and it's going to start the single sign-on flow for me. I'm going to choose my Teleport Gmail account here. And when I arrive in here, at the top, I can see where this cluster is located. It happens to be in AWS West. If I had multiple Teleport clusters deployed in multiple environments, so maybe different regions, different cloud providers, a hybrid of on-prem and in the cloud, I have this drop down where I can easily jump around into my different environments. And what I can see in here in this servers area, the role that I have is authorizing me to see these 4 servers. I can see, host name information. I can see labels. And you'll notice also there's this tunnel option. So you do have the option to add servers using reverse tunnels.
Okay.
So that's what that means here. So if you have maybe an IoT device, you can use reverse tunnel so that it can reach out to your Teleport proxy in order to add itself to your cluster. And these labels, this is part of Teleport's role-based access controls. So again, you can associate labels with your infrastructure, and those labels can be static, so something you hard code. They can also be dynamic. So a dynamic label is going to be the output of some command that you're running at a configurable interval. And a use case for that might be querying cloud provider APIs to pull tags that you're already using for your infrastructure and use those tags as labels within Teleport. So that way in your Teleport roles, you can allow or deny access based on all of these labels you associate with your infrastructure. And labels can be applied for SSH servers, also applications. You'll see I have some labels. Same with Kubernetes access and databases. But while I'm here in servers, something I can show is if I click this connect button, what I see are different users I can SSH as. And again, where these are coming from is from the Teleport role that I have been assigned based on my group membership within the identity provider. But if I click on something like Ubuntu, I immediately have this SSH session, whatever kind of sysadmin stuff I might be doing in here to fix something or investigating, I'm able to do that. And if I exit out, and if I go into the audit logs to see what Teleport is capturing, I can see starting with my SSO login, again, tied to my identity. And if I look at this session that was started, view the details, here's that JSON formatted log I was mentioning before. So my IP address, who I SSH'd as, but most importantly, who actually is the person SSHing as that user.
And you can do like a one to many and a many to one. So like your user as Jonathon the human has access to lots of system users, and lots of humans can use the same system user?
Yeah, so it's really in the Teleport roles that you create.
Mm-hmm.
So when you set up that SSO integration, you set up the mapping of groups that exist within the IDP to your Teleport roles, and it's within the Teleport roles that you can specify within a given role what can that person in this role, what users are they allowed to SSH as, what labels are they allowed to access, how long is their access good for. But you can also templatize those roles so you don't have to have a complete one-to-one for every single group that's within your IDP. You can reference claims within your teleport roles. So you can use variables within your teleport roles and reference claims. And what I mean by that is if I take a look at these roles that I have. So the role I currently have is admin because this is my teleport cluster. But you can see allow, you can allow on application labels, database names, what database users I'm allowed to be as I interact with the database, Kubernetes groups, labels. But the part I wanted to mention is this external keyword. So you'll see that here as well. So this external keyword means when a user is authenticating via SSO into teleport, this external says, for that user, look for some claim called this that's associated with their account in the IDP and use the value of that claim as the value for this. So for me, logins, what this is referring to are the SSH users that I'm allowed to SSH as.
Mm-hmm.
So I hard-coded these two, but what this one becomes external.email, this means that I can SSH as the first part of my email address, Canada. This one is I can SSH as the claim first name, which becomes my first name, so I can SSH as Jonathon into a server.
Cool.
Yeah. And the same applies for the node labels too. So right now I have ***, so you can use regex for all this as well. But let's say I wanted to make it so that users could only access servers that have a label of their first name. So they could only see their servers that they own, nobody else's servers. I could do something like this. So when somebody logged in, and if they had this admin role, what this would become is whatever their first name is. So they would only be able to access infrastructure that had the label of name equals their first name. So for me, it would become, Jonathon. I would not see anybody else's infrastructure, only labels that are this.
Cool.
Does
That's
that
super helpful.
make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely. 100%. Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing, just to kind of go back into the audit logs, so I showed that JSON log, again, tying SSH users to specific identities as they are in the IDP. And as I mentioned before, another hat I wear outside of this is I'm a cyber operations officer in the Army National Guard. So I do lots of incident response. And we'll arrive into environments, and we have to help with attribution, figuring out how this all started, series of events. I would love to see teleport in those environments. It would make a lot of that much easier. Just something as simple as this. And then the other piece is clicking this button. It would be great to also see what happened in that session.
Oh, it's a full recording of it. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, you can scroll around, and you can even copy and then paste this somewhere else. So maybe there's some configuration you want to be reminded of. You can watch one of these, copy from that configuration, paste it over into your new environment. And you can also play this back in a terminal window as well.
And for folks who would be capturing this for their post-mortem or some other report about an incident, that seems like that would be super helpful bit of information.
Absolutely, especially in an audit. So for auditors, you show them this, you get a pass. They like it. So that's the server access piece. There's also applications, so you can use Teleport to grant access to internal applications. So like I have this Elk stack, for example, that is only listening on localhost. It's a Docker Compose deployment that I have. But because I've exposed it via Teleport, I now can just come in here, launch this. You'll see it creates a subdomain for me. It's using signed TLS certificates as I access this. And the other advantage is if this is an application that's maybe open source, otherwise does not have an SSO integration, because I'm exposing these applications via Teleport and I access Teleport via SSO and using labels to grant access, Teleport can kind of add on to an open source offering that otherwise doesn't have as much maybe in terms of SSO or role-based access controls. So the other part, I'll just quickly jump over into the CLI just to show some of that. So here, let me move that. I have TSH, which is Teleport CLI tool that I'm going to use to log into this same proxy I've been interacting with in my UI. So if I kick this off, it's going to open up my web browser again to bring up this SSO flow. So I sign in again with my Teleport account. And it's going to say login successful, go back to what I was doing. So I can see information about my session, what cluster I'm in, roles I have, how long my access is good for, other options here. But with TSH, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do. So if I want to be interacting with Kubernetes, if I want to set up MFA devices, databases, applications, SSH, if I want to see the same stuff I saw in my UI, I can do TSH LS, and it provides me that same list of host names, IP address, labels. And if I were to SSH into this, it's the same SSH options, just pre-appended with TSH. For endpoint, you can use host name, IP, or even labels. So if I hit enter on that, I use this label, I have this session going. If I decrease this size and go into my Chrome browser again, something to show here is this session joining capability. So we've seen a lot of popularity throughout the pandemic for this feature. Perhaps this is somebody here who needs help with some task they're doing, and somebody maybe wants to help them out or just see what they're up to. You can come in here, see active sessions. So I can see, somebody's SSH is Ubuntu, who they are. And if I clicked into this button, I can now join this session. So here I am in the terminal window. This is the CLI.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that is super slick. That definitely is a killer feature right there.
Yeah, no more trying to do this over Zoom or whatever options might
be
out
right.
there.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can easily just leave the session. This person still has their session going, and the audit logs are capturing somebody's joining the session, somebody's leaving it, and you're also still getting that full session recording like I showed before.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So one last thing I can show before I jump into the PagerDuty specific components is the Kubernetes stuff.
Yeah.
So do LS to see what Kubernetes clusters are part of this deployment. If I do kubectl request, Teleport is going to capture every kubectl request that I do. And if I exec into a pod, kubectl exec into this pod with a bash shell. So this is K8s. Exit from here. Go back into my audit logs. So you can see we're capturing these Kubernetes requests. Actually, let me show this one, which was my get pods. So here was my get pods, what namespace I was in, who's doing that kubectl request. And just like before, click this button, and here's the playback of what I did in that pod. So super robust, auditing, logging, observability into what's happening across this environment. Now, I guess before I move on to the PagerDuty integration, do you have any other questions about any of this? Anything else to dive into here?
I think we covered everything that came in the chat, and yeah, and you had mentioned that you can export all those logs and things like that. That all can go to whatever other storage or search capabilities that folks might need for their audit and stuff like that, right? So
yeah, there's a bunch of options for that. So we have native integration with AWS services, GCP services. We also have an integration with FluentD. So here in our documentation, FluentD is an open source event handler, so you can forward events using FluentD to pretty much anywhere you need. So whether that's a Sumo Logic, a Splunk, Elastic, whatever you have.
Sweet. Very helpful.
Yeah. So I can switch over to the PagerDuty stuff.
Yeah, let's show us the PagerDuty magic here.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a user in this Firefox browser. Let me make this a little bigger. I'll log into, it's the same proxy I've been interacting with in my Chrome browser and in my terminal window. But this time, instead of my Teleport Gmail account, I'm going to choose my personal Gmail account that I've set up to have a role that has, no permissions by default.
Oh, okay.
So they can't see any servers, can't see applications, Kubernetes databases. They also can't see any of the audit logs or any of those admin capabilities, so they can't create teleport resources. The only thing they can do is these access requests. Before I start that access request process, let me show you what their roles look like. So back here in my Chrome browser where I'm this admin user, where I can view roles. So I've set them up to have this contractor role. So with Teleport, it's all these YAML formatted resources. It's a bunch of none in here. But what they can do is in this request section, they can request a role called dev role, and Teleport is going to be able to see that if they are on call in this dev environment service in PagerDuty, and if there's an incident that is assigned to them in this PagerDuty service, then when they request some role, this dev role in this example is the only one they can request, Teleport's going to automatically approve their request. This service here, this is another service I created in PagerDuty. This is the service that handles that approval process, but we won't really go into depth here. It's mainly this one where this user is actually going to be on call and have an incident assigned to them. And if I look at the dev role, this is the one that they are going to request and assume. So in here, this is actually going to give them some stuff that they can do. So Kubernetes groups that they can be a part of, some labels, SSH users. They'll be able to see any servers that have this label of environment equals development. So you'll see once they assume this dev role, it'll change from how it is now with no servers found to servers that have the label of environment equals development, and they will be able to SSH as Ubuntu.
Okay.
So if I go into PagerDuty, so these are the two services I mentioned. This is the one we're not going to really dive into. This is where the what's handling that auto approval process with Teleport. But here is the service where I am on call, some important infrastructure. If I come in here, I'll just manually create a new incident, create some new incident. I'll say the servers are down. Not good. Create that incident.
It's more important when there's more exclamation points.
Absolutely. It's super important. So let me go ahead and it's been triggered. Oh no, let me acknowledge that. It's been acknowledged. So in my Firefox browser, let me expand this again. I'll go to access requests. I'll click request access. So I'm allowed to request this dev role.
Okay.
This request reason, this is more if you're using maybe another integration that's not doing an auto approval. But and same with reviewers. If I had some other integration set up, I could specify who I maybe wanted to review this and some reason for them. But I will send this request off, and you can see it's pending. If I refresh the page, it's automatically approved the request. And if I view it, I can see why it was automatically approved. So I can see that this access requested by me, who is on call in that dev environment service, and I have active incidents assigned. So that's why this was auto approved.
So your Teleport server made the API calls then into PagerDuty to get that information and pull it back through.
Exactly. Yeah. So I created an API access key in PagerDuty, and when I set up this PagerDuty plugin on my Teleport server, I provided some information to that PagerDuty plugin in Teleport. So where to find the service, what API key to use, some other information like that.
Cool. Okay.
And if I assume the role, you can see role assumed. So I can do this for about an hour to go in.
Okay.
And if you remember before, there was nothing here. This dev role allows me to see anything that has the label of environment equals development. So now I can see a subset of what I could see in my admin role, and also a subset of users. So now this Ubuntu user is here, can go in here and fix whatever the problem was. The other part of this too is you'll see authentication is required. It's asking me for some kind of key. So Teleport does support per session MFA. So in addition to the MFA you might have when somebody does an SSO login, to take that one step further, especially for this, this contractor is who I've set this up as. You can require them to, even though they've gone through the SSO workflow, they've received certificates, and I'll start this over in a second. In order to actually start an SSH session or to issue kubectl requests, you can require them to use either a YubiKey or an OTP, like an authenticator app, to actually initiate the session. So let me try that again. This time I'll tap on my YubiKey. So SSH is Ubuntu. If I tap on my YubiKey that's currently plugged in, so now I can start my session. So just an added layer of security.
Excellent.
And of course, everything I do in here is being captured, recorded. I'll exit out of there, go back into my Chrome browser where I can see admin stuff. I'll go in my audit logs. So it's also capturing these access requests that are happening and everything that this other user is doing. One other thing I will show is what happens once this actually gets fixed. So let me say that I fixed it. The servers are back up again. I'm going to resolve this. Go. Resolve that incident. So come back to my main screen. So there are no longer any open incidents. No news is good news. And in my Firefox browser, let me switch back. So I'm not assuming that dev role anymore. And I'm going to delete that role request. So here in my Chrome browser, as the admin user, I can delete this request, delete it. So back into my Firefox browser, here in access request, it's been deleted, so I can't assume something. So now if I try to request access, but I do not have an incident assigned to me, request access, select a dev role, send that request, it's pending, refresh, it's pending. So it's not going to let me just at will try to assume roles to start doing stuff.
Okay.
I have to have an incident assigned to me, and I have to be on call. So those two things must be met for this to be automatically approved.
Approved. Excellent.
Yeah. So I'd say that covers the extent of that PagerDuty integration. So definitely makes it easier to kind of automate middle of the night access requests for somebody who has an incident assigned to them and who's currently on call.
Yeah, definitely. Like you don't have to, hope that your security folks are going to be online. So then at the granularity on the PagerDuty side, you're actually setting those up at the service level, right? So that's where the integration kind of lives, is each service would be able to hook into the teleport components that way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I can even show the configuration file that's in my teleport server.
Oh yeah, let's see that.
OSSH. I'll just go as root this time.
We won't tell. It's okay.
I'm the admin user. I'm going in straight as root here just because this stuff requires root to
sure. Okay.
set up. PagerDuty, there it is.
Oh,
so this
excellent.
is the configuration file. So the PagerDuty specific items is here. And for all of you sneaky people, I am going to delete this API key after this. So don't try doing stuff with this. It's going to be gone. So this is the stuff I provide, my service ID, my API key, so that when some teleport receives a role request and this PagerDuty plugin is running, it's going to use this information to be able to interact with PagerDuty to see, is this user on call and do they have an incident that's currently assigned to them? If so, auto approve, set to true, go ahead, auto approve it. And the rest of this is teleport specific stuff for communicating with teleports APIs. And that's all in our documentation if you go through and try to set this up. The other super important thing that I have not even mentioned is that Teleport is open source. So you can just go right now to our GitHub repository or to our website and just start playing with our open source version. So you could, start having fun with Teleport.
Oh, that's
right
excellent.
now. Yeah.
So we know, like PagerDuty, we've got like somewhere in excess of 600 different integrations. So for Teleport, like, do you have an idea of how many things you guys integrate with these days?
Yeah, so like for these kind of access requests, is that the
Yeah, for all how all that stuff flows.
yeah, so the integrations that we've built out for these access requests, obviously PagerDuty, also Slack, Jira. We do have APIs. So if you wanted to create a custom integration, that's totally possible. We are also soon to release email notifications.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you can have a request be sent to somebody's email. Yeah, for everything with Teleport, I mean, you can use the UI, you can use CLI, you can use our APIs. So very flexible in terms of how you want to, use Teleport to grant access to infrastructure, to set up access requests, to send logs to wherever you need them sent to. It's very flexible and open source. If you want to look at our code, just go in our GitHub repository.
Yeah, I put the GitHub repository in the chat for folks that are interested in taking a look at the code there and maybe contributing or taking a look at that. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I think we got all the questions. If anybody else has any questions, I put the signups for PagerDuty and for Teleport accounts in the chat. You can find them there. For folks that are viewing this recorded, I will put them in the show notes, so you can just find them down below there, and you can get started with PagerDuty and Teleport. So if you're looking for a solution to get your incidents and your responders approved for the things that they need to have access to respond to their incidents, it sounds like an excellent solution with lots of audit and other features for all you folks out there that need that kind of stuff. So folks in the audience definitely approve of the logging and that auto approval. That is definitely one for when folks are responding to an incident. You don't want to be sitting around waiting for somebody to approve you. So
absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Was there anything else you'd like folks to know before we sign off today?
So we do have, because we are open source, we do have a vibrant open source community. So we do have an open source Slack channel. Feel free to join that. You have questions about Teleport, you can go in there. Also GitHub discussions in our GitHub repository. So there's a lot of ways to interact with us and get familiar with Teleport.
Cool. That sounds great.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting me today. Yeah. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Teleport and most importantly, talk about the PagerDuty integration.
Yeah, I think that's going to be super helpful for folks. Do you have an integrations page on your website that we can give to folks in the chat here? Let me see if I can.
We do, yeah. So both in our documentation as well as in our GitHub repository. Here it is, Teleport Enterprise, access requests. So this is where it can be set up. Should I just put that into the...
Yeah, go ahead and stick that in the chat there. And we'll get that to folks.
And did you also share our GitHub repository?
I did, yeah.
Cool, great.
So folks can find you there, and hopefully we'll get you some more contributors. Those are always good.
Absolutely.
To know what people need and what they're looking for and how they can help out. So, all right. Well, I think that covers it for today. So Jonathon, thank you so much for being our very first guest on our Twitch stream. We're super happy to have you. And we'll be signing off. Again, my name is Mandy Walls. If you'd like to get in touch with any folks on our team, we are community-team@pagerduty.com. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at PagerDuty. And if you'd like to be on our stream, please let us know. We'd love to talk to you. And otherwise, have a great day, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Never miss a stream. Follow us on Twitch at PD Community and PagerDuty. For more on our events worldwide, check out pagerduty.com/events. Do you want to join us on the stream? Email community-team@pagerduty.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe.